The summer I turned 16, my brother and I went to stay with our grandparents for a week. We ate dinner with them. We listened to them talk. We let them tuck us in at night. And 3 days later, we found their bodies upstairs, rotting in a locked bedroom. If you think that sounds impossible, I would have agreed with you. But the truth is, the bodies weren't the worst part. The worst part was what happened after we found them. Because whatever had been pretending to be our grandparents already knew we had seen the truth, and it did not want us leaving that house alive. It was the summer of 1998. I was 16. My little brother Ben was 13. Our parents sent us ahead by train to spend a week with our grandparents at their farmhouse in rural Vermont, tucked deep in the hills outside a town so small it barely deserved a name. Mom used to talk about that place like it belonged in a dream. Wild berry patches, fireflies in the fields, homemade pies cooling by the window, summer storms rolling over the mountains while everyone sat on the porch drinking lemonade. To Ben, it sounded like freedom. To me, it sounded like a chance to be away from everything for a while. Our family hadn't visited in years. Life happened, distance happened, and then suddenly, almost a decade had gone by. So when our grandparents insisted we come stay with them for part of the summer, our parents said yes. It was the first time Ben and I were traveling alone. He spent the train ride practically bouncing in his seat, pointing at every lake, every forest, every rundown house we passed like it meant something. He was still young enough to believe every unfamiliar place might become an adventure. I was old enough to know better, but I was still excited. At least, I was until we got off the train. The station was tiny. One platform, one bench, one vending machine humming under a faded sign. The sun was still high, and the heat lay over everything like a wet cloth. That was when I saw them. Grandma Evelyn and Grandpa Walter were standing at the far end of the platform beside an old, dark station wagon. For 1 second, I felt relief. They looked exactly the way I remembered from photographs. Grandpa Walter was tall and narrow, his shoulders slightly bent with age. Grandma Evelyn was small and elegant, with her silver locket hanging at her throat. Then we got closer, and everything started to feel wrong. They were dressed for cold weather. Grandma wore a thick wool shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Grandpa had on a dark coat buttoned all the way to the throat. It was nearly 90 degrees. Their skin looked strangely pale, not the soft paleness of old age, but something flatter, empty, as if the color beneath it had been drained out. And their smiles came too late, like they saw us, remembered what expression they were supposed to make, and then put it on. Ben didn't notice anything. He ran toward Grandpa and hugged him. "Grandpa Walter!" My grandfather's arms closed around him after a pause that was just a little too long. "Ben," he said in a voice as dry and flat as paper, "you've gotten bigger." Grandma stepped toward me and pulled me into a hug so tight it almost hurt. Her body felt cold through her clothes. "It's so good to have the children home," she whispered. "Not here. Not with us. Home." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. I told myself I was being dramatic. The drive to the farmhouse took almost an hour. Ben talked the whole time. About the train, about the mountains, about how creepy the station looked, about how he wanted to explore the woods as soon as we got there. Neither of our grandparents responded like normal people. They didn't laugh. They didn't ask questions. They didn't interrupt. They just listened in silence while taking turns watching us in the rearview mirror. Not lovingly, not proudly. Watching. The road narrowed the farther we drove. Houses disappeared, then fences disappeared. Then even mailboxes became rare. The trees drew closer on both sides until it felt like the car had entered some green tunnel that led away from the rest of the world. When the farmhouse finally appeared at the end of the dirt road, I knew instantly that my mother had lied to us, or maybe time had. The house was huge, but it looked half dead. The yellow paint had peeled down to gray wood. Tall grass had swallowed most of the yard. The porch sagged. The barn leaned slightly to one side like it was tired of standing. Rusted tools lay where they had fallen years ago. And on the porch, beside the front door, an old wooden rocking chair moved slowly back and forth. There was no wind. Ben laughed because that was easier than admitting fear. "Well," he said, "if we die here, at least the setting makes sense." I laughed too, but neither of us moved right away. Inside, the house smelled wrong. Not old, not dusty. Wrong. The kind of smell your body reacts to before your brain does. My throat tightened. My stomach turned. It was sweet and damp and rotten all at once, like spoiled meat hidden under wet earth. Ben covered his nose. "What is that?" Grandma Evelyn turned her head and smiled. "Fertilizer from the fields," she said softly. "Country air." Then she drifted into the kitchen. Grandpa Walter carried our bags to a downstairs bedroom with 2 narrow beds, faded wallpaper, and 1 tall window looking out toward a back field lined by dense dark trees. Even in daylight, the room felt dim. Even in summer, it felt cold. At dinner, things got worse. Grandma Evelyn served us stew and bread. Ben and I were hungry, so we ate. Our grandparents sat across from us at the table, but they never touched the food. They didn't even pretend. There were no plates in front of them, no silverware, no glasses. Just their hands folded neatly on the table while they watched us eat. "We're so happy you came," Grandma said. "So happy," Grandpa repeated. "It gets lonely here. Very lonely." There was nothing wrong with the words. It was the rhythm, the way they sounded memorized, the way each sentence landed like a line from a script they had practiced together. Ben noticed too. "Aren't you guys hungry?" Grandpa Walter smiled. "We already ate." Something about the answer made the room feel smaller. The entire dinner, I could feel their eyes on us. Not affectionate, not even curious. Appraising, like butchers studying the weight of an animal. That night, just before bed, Grandpa Walter appeared in our doorway. The hallway behind him was dark, so his face looked like it was floating. "You may hear animals outside tonight," he said. Then he added, in a firmer voice, "Whatever you hear, do not leave this room after dark." Ben waited until he was gone before whispering, "That's the kind of thing people say right before everyone gets possessed." I almost laughed. Almost. The next 2 days passed in a way that would have felt normal if not for all the details that kept slipping out of place. Breakfast appeared on the table every morning, but our grandparents never ate with us. They left every afternoon to work in the fields and returned only after dark. There was a phone in the kitchen, but it was dead. Not silent in a technical way, dead in a heavier way. When I lifted the receiver, it felt like holding something disconnected, not just from electricity, but from the world itself. Ben spent most of his time outside with his Walkman, wandering around the property, kicking through weeds, sitting on an old rusted swing behind the house. I stayed inside more than I wanted to admit. The woods around the farmhouse bothered me. They were too still. No bird song most of the time. no movement in the branches. Sometimes I'd look out the window and get the strange feeling the tree line was closer than before, as if the woods had taken a few silent steps toward the house while I wasn't looking. At first, I blamed isolation. Then came the smaller things. One afternoon, Ben found the refrigerator standing open. Inside was almost nothing except a metal pot with a lid on it. He lifted it and found a thick, dark red liquid, filling it nearly to the top. When he asked Grandma what it was, she stared at him too long and then said, "A family recipe." Then she laughed, not naturally. It burst out of her all at once, loud and high and wrong, then kept going after the joke had ended, if there had even been one. Ben backed out of the room. Later that same day, I found Grandpa Walter sitting in the living room staring into the corner beside the fireplace. He didn't blink, didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. Then, very quietly, he nodded once at the empty wall, as if someone standing there had just finished speaking. When he noticed me, he turned and smiled. "Did you sleep well?" Like the last 5 minutes had never happened. By the third night, I no longer believed they were simply old or eccentric. I woke after midnight to a sound in the hallway. Not footsteps, dragging. A heavy, wet scrape. Then silence. Then another scrape, closer this time. Moonlight leaked through the curtains. Ben slept on his side, one arm hanging off the bed. The sound stopped outside our room. A shadow moved beneath the door, large, misshapen. I remembered the warning not to leave the room. But fear and curiosity are siblings. Once one wakes up, the other is never far behind. I got out of bed and crossed the room on bare feet. The smell hit me before I touched the handle. That same rotten sweetness, only stronger now, dense enough to taste. I opened the door an inch. The hallway was dark. At first, I saw nothing. Then I heard it again. A wet, uneven sound from farther down the hall. Like something trying to drag itself quietly. Like meat being pulled across old wood. I leaned forward. A hand touched my shoulder. I screamed so hard my throat burned. Grandma Evelyn was standing behind me. I still don't know how she moved so quietly. Her face was inches from mine. In the dark, her skin looked gray, almost translucent. Her eyes reflected the moonlight without warmth, like glass marbles dropped into a dead thing. "You shouldn't be awake," she whispered. Her smile never changed. I tried to answer and couldn't. She tilted her head slightly, listening to something deeper in the house. Then she said, "Back to bed, sweetheart." I stumbled backward into the room. She stood there until I was under the covers, then closed the door slowly, never taking her eyes off me. I didn't sleep again. By morning, everything looked harmless. That was the worst part. Sunlight filled the kitchen. Grandma hummed softly while placing toast on the table. Grandpa asked Ben if he liked the swing out back. Outside, the fields glowed gold under the sun. It was almost enough to make me think I'd imagined the night. Almost. As soon as they left that afternoon, I told Ben everything. He went pale. Then he told me he had heard children laughing inside the house earlier that day. Not outside, inside. He had seen the shape of a little boy move past the hallway window. When he ran in, no one was there. Then he took me into the living room and showed me an old black and white family photo above the fireplace. Grandma Evelyn and Grandpa Walter stood together in front of the farmhouse, years younger, stiff and smiling. Ben's voice shook when he spoke. "A minute ago," he said, "there was blood coming out of their eyes." The picture looked normal when I saw it, but I believed him. At that point, I would have believed almost anything. The house had 3 main bedrooms, ours downstairs, a guest room, and our grandparents' room upstairs. That room was always closed, always locked. And somehow, both of us already knew the smell was strongest there. We waited an hour after the station wagon disappeared down the road. Then Ben took the ring of spare keys from the kitchen drawer, and we climbed the stairs. Every step groaned. The second floor felt hotter than the rest of the house, but the air carried a damp chill that slid under my skin. The hallway curtains were drawn. Dust floated in the stale light. At the end of the hall stood their bedroom door. Ben tried one key. Nothing. Then another. Nothing. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press them flat against my thighs to stop them. The 5th key turned. The lock clicked. Neither of us moved for a second. Then I pushed the door open. The smell hit us so hard Ben gagged instantly. It wasn't just rot. It was confinement, heat, fluids, time, the smell of something that should have been buried but had been kept, shut away, and left to soften in darkness. The curtains were closed. Flies buzzed weakly against the window. Dust hung in the room like smoke. And on the bed, under a stained quilt, lay 2 bodies. Not sleeping, not fresh. Dead long enough for the room to feel claimed by them. Their skin had darkened and tightened in some places, loosened in others. Hair clung in thin gray patches to their scalps. One hand rested outside the blanket, swollen at the fingers, the wedding ring still on it. Ben made a broken, choking noise behind me. I stepped closer. Then I saw the silver locket. Grandma Evelyn's locket. The same one she had been wearing downstairs that morning. Beside her, on the man's hand, was Grandpa Walter's wedding band. The exact same band. No doubt. No mistake. My brain refused it at first, then accepted it all at once. Those were our grandparents, the real ones, which meant whatever had picked us up from the station, whatever had eaten dinner with us, whatever stood outside our bedroom at night, was wearing them. Ben grabbed my arm so hard his nails dug into my skin. "Lucy," he whispered, barely audible. "They're dead." But it got worse, because when I looked closer, I realized these bodies weren't months old, not even close. There was too much of them left, too much shape, too much moisture in the ruin. They had died recently, days ago, which meant the things downstairs had not simply taken our grandparents' place. They had done it for us. A floorboard creaked behind us. We turned. No one. Then from downstairs the dead kitchen phone began to ring. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound cut through the whole house. Ben started crying in the quiet way children cry when terror has gone beyond noise. Then a voice floated up the stairs, warm, gentle, familiar. Our mother's voice. "Lucy? Ben? We're here, honey." Every muscle in my body locked. Our parents were hours away. The phone line was dead, and my mother had never called me honey in that tone unless I was sick. The voice came again, closer now, from the bottom of the stairs. "Come downstairs. Grandma made dinner." My mouth went dry. The tone was perfect. The sentence was wrong. Ben's nails dug deeper into my arm. Then, behind us, a soft, wet sound came from inside the bedroom. We turned back toward the bed. One of the bodies had moved. Not much. Just enough. Grandpa Walter's head had rolled slightly toward us, jaw slack, mouth open wider than before. And from somewhere deep in that ruined throat came a faint, bubbling whisper. "Don't let them wear you." Ben screamed. I staggered backward into the dressing mirror near the wall, and in the reflection, I saw them. Grandma Evelyn and Grandpa Walter standing in the doorway behind us. Only it wasn't really them anymore, not in the mirror. Outside the mirror, they still looked almost normal, still elderly, still polite, still human enough to lie to a child. But in the reflection, the disguise slipped. Their faces sagged in the wrong places, like damp skin draped over shapes that didn't understand bone. Grandma's smile stretched too wide, splitting at the corners into something animal. Grandpa's eyes were not eyes at all, just dark, wet hollows, like fingers had pushed through paper. Their bodies seemed too tall for the clothes, too loose inside them, as if the people they wore were only costumes borrowed in a hurry. Grandma spoke first, but it was still our mother's voice coming out of her mouth. "You shouldn't have gone upstairs." Then Grandpa added, in my father's voice this time, calm and disappointed, "We wanted one more night." The bedroom door slammed shut behind them. Ben ran to the window, but it had been nailed shut. I grabbed the knob. Locked. I don't remember screaming. I only remember the sound of my own pulse exploding in my ears while they moved toward us with slow, patient steps. Not rushing. Never rushing. Predators don't hurry when the room is closed. Grandma, if it was Grandma, lifted one trembling hand and touched her own cheek. The skin there shifted under her fingers, peeled slightly, and beneath it, just for a second, I saw something dark and slick moving underneath, as if another face was trying to surface from under the one she wore. Ben backed into the bed and nearly fell over the corpse. That was when the thing wearing Grandpa Walter smiled with my brother's mouth. Not Ben's actual mouth. A perfect imitation of it. Like he had already rehearsed the face it planned to steal next. "Don't cry," it said in Ben's own voice. The sound broke something in me, because suddenly I understood. They didn't just mimic voices. They learned you, studied you, watched how your family spoke, how they smiled, how they comforted you. And once they wore someone long enough, they got better at it. Close enough to fool you, close enough to get invited in, close enough to sit across from you at dinner while the real thing rotted upstairs. The one in Grandma's skin took another step. "You'll feel better once it's done," it said softly, now in my voice, my exact voice. Same pitch, same breath, same shape to the words. Ben looked at me in horror, and I realized the thing wasn't practicing. It had already learned me, too. That was the last clean thought I had before the lights in the room went out. Not flickered. Went out. All at once. The house dropped into complete darkness. Ben started screaming my name. Somewhere in the black, something laughed, high, thin, delighted. Then hands found my face, cold hands, too many fingers, and in the darkness, inches from my ear, my own voice whispered, "When Mom calls next time, which one of us do you think she'll believe?"